The Zarak Warlords arrived silently in Earth's orbit, their massive ships casting shadows across the planet's surface. They were an advanced species, with a long history of conquering worlds using technology that made their enemies' defenses crumble like paper. Their energy weapons could obliterate entire cities, and their antimatter bombs had reduced countless civilizations to nothing but dust. To them, Earth was merely another conquest, a backwater planet with technology barely worthy of their attention. High Warlord Carrick stood in the command center of his ship, observing the blue and green planet through the reinforced glass. His face twisted into a smug smile as he reviewed the intelligence reports on Earth's military capabilities. Primitive ballistic weapons, he thought. Obsolete relics that had no place in modern warfare. The Earthlings, with their missiles and bombs, were hopelessly outmatched by the sheer superiority of Zarak technology. They would fall quickly, just like the countless other worlds that had crumbled before the might of the Zarak Empire. Carrick turned to his second-in-command, a grizzled veteran of many campaigns. "Tell me, Commander Lauren, how long do you think it will take to bring these Earthlings to their knees?" Lauren studied the data for a moment before responding. "A matter of days at most. Their weaponry is laughable compared to ours. Their so-called artillery is outdated and ineffective. Our shields will make short work of any resistance they offer." Carrick laughed, a deep, guttural sound. "Good. I tire of this campaign already. Let's crush them swiftly and move on to more worthy conquests." Back on Earth, the mood in military command centers was anything but smug. Human generals and strategists scrambled to make sense of the alien invasion. The Zarak ships had appeared without warning, their advanced technology making them nearly invisible to Earth's early warning systems. The world's governments had come together in an unprecedented display of unity, knowing that humanity's survival depended on their ability to fight as one. But the situation was dire. The aliens were unlike anything humanity had ever faced. Their weapons were beyond comprehension, capable of destruction on a scale that dwarfed even the most powerful nuclear bombs in Earth's arsenal. And yet, Earth's military leaders knew that surrender was not an option. They had one weapon that might give them a fighting chance: the M777 Howitzer. The Howitzer was a marvel of human engineering. It was a long-range artillery weapon, mobile and precise, capable of launching devastating shells with pinpoint accuracy. It had been a key weapon in Earth's wars, and now, in humanity's darkest hour, it would once again be called upon to defend the planet. The generals knew that while their nuclear weapons could cause widespread destruction, they needed something more precise, something that could target the alien ground forces without turning entire cities to rubble. The Howitzer was that weapon. As human forces scrambled to prepare for the alien invasion, the Zarak Warlords remained confident in their victory. They had never encountered a species capable of withstanding their superior technology, and they had no reason to believe Earth would be any different. In fact, Carrick found the humans' efforts almost amusing. Through their intelligence networks, the Zarak had intercepted transmissions detailing Earth's military strategy, and the mention of artillery made him laugh. How pathetic, he thought. Ballistic weapons, in this age of energy and antimatter. The humans might as well be throwing rocks. The invasion plan was simple. The Zarak would land their ground forces, backed by massive war machines and aerial support. Their plasma cannons would vaporize any human forces foolish enough to resist, and their energy shields would render Earth's primitive weapons useless. The humans would see the futility of their struggle and surrender within days. But the humans had other plans. Earth's military leaders, though outgunned, were not about to roll over. They knew they couldn't match the Zarak's technology, but they also knew that the Zarak had made a critical mistake. They had underestimated human resolve. The Howitzer, while primitive by the Zarak standards, had one key advantage: it was something the Zarak had never encountered. Their energy shields were designed to repel energy-based weapons, but ballistic projectiles were a different story. The Howitzer could bypass their shields, delivering devastating blows to their ground forces. The stakes were clear. If humanity was to survive, it would need to use every resource at its disposal. The Zarak warlords, confident in their superiority, believed the humans would fold quickly, but Earth's leaders knew that surrender was not an option. They would fight to the last man if necessary, knowing that the future of their planet, and their species, hung in the balance. Carrick watched as the first of the Zarak ground forces prepared for landing. Massive troop carriers, bristling with weapons, descended through Earth's atmosphere, accompanied by towering war machines designed to crush any resistance in their path. It was a display of overwhelming force, meant to send a clear message: resistance is futile. But as the Zarak war machines touched down on Earth, something unexpected happened. The humans didn't flee. They didn't surrender. Instead, they fought back. And at the forefront of their defense was the M777 Howitzer, a weapon the Zarak had dismissed as a relic, but which would soon prove to be their downfall. As the first Howitzer shells were fired, the Zarak warlords watched in shock. The explosions ripped through their ground forces, tearing apart tanks and infantry alike. Their energy shields, which had always been their greatest defense, were useless against the raw power of the Howitzer. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Zarak warlords found themselves facing an enemy that could fight back. Carrick's smug confidence evaporated as he watched the destruction unfold. This was not how the invasion was supposed to go. The humans were supposed to crumble, to bow before the might of the Zarak Empire. And yet here they were, standing their ground, refusing to give in. Earth's leaders, watching the same scene from their command centers, knew that this was only the beginning. The war was far from over, but for the first time since the invasion began, they had hope. The Zarak had underestimated humanity, and that mistake would cost them dearly. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the fate of Earth would not be decided by superior technology alone. It would be determined by the will to survive, the determination to fight, and the power of human ingenuity. The Zarak invasion began with overwhelming force. Their tanks, towering and bristling with alien weaponry, rolled across Earth's surface, and their infantry, clad in energy shields and plasma rifles, followed in disciplined formation. The sight of the alien forces marching onto Earth's soil filled human soldiers with dread. The sheer size of the alien war machines and the seemingly impenetrable shields they carried made them appear invincible. Plasma weapons fired from the alien tanks, cutting through the atmosphere with blinding flashes, reducing human defenses to smoldering ruins. The first line of defense crumbled almost immediately. Earth's hastily assembled military found themselves outmatched, their modern firearms and missiles proving ineffective against the advanced shielding of the Zarak forces. Plasma cannons tore through human tanks, obliterating anything in their path. The initial human resistance was nothing more than a speed bump to the Zarak, who plowed through with terrifying efficiency. Watching the destruction unfold, the alien warlords found themselves amused, not concerned. This was easier than they had anticipated. High Warlord Carrick's voice echoed across the command bridge, confident and mocking. "These humans are as pitiful as the others before them," he said, observing the battlefield with detached satisfaction. The destruction of Earth's defenses was proceeding according to plan. The Zarak had encountered nothing to suggest that humanity would pose a serious challenge. But on Earth, the military leadership wasn't ready to give up. Orders for a counterattack went out, and soon, fighter jets and bombers screamed into the skies, launching precision strikes at the alien forces. Drones hovered above, targeting Zarak tanks, while ground troops engaged the alien infantry. Despite their bravery, human forces struggled to inflict any meaningful damage. Missiles were intercepted by the Zarak's advanced energy shields. Bombs exploded harmlessly against alien armor, and bullets bounced off without so much as a dent. The demoralization was spreading quickly among human ranks. Soldiers saw their efforts amount to little more than sparks against the overwhelming firepower of the alien invaders. To the Zarak, it was almost entertaining. Carrick and his fellow commanders watched the battlefield with bemused indifference. What little resistance humanity offered was more a nuisance than a threat. The idea of Earth retaliating with outdated, primitive technology was laughable. As they watched human artillery being positioned miles away, they barely paid it any mind. The Zarak had never fought against ballistic weapons like the M777 Howitzer. They had no reason to fear it, assuming their energy shields would protect them. For all their advanced knowledge of warfare, they had failed to consider that humanity's ingenuity might come in a form they couldn't predict. It wasn't long before the first volley was fired from the howitzers. From miles away, the ground shook as the shells were launched toward the alien invaders. The Zarak commanders observed the incoming projectiles on their screens with mild curiosity. Ballistic weapons? Truly? It was as if the humans were fighting with relics from a forgotten era. Carrick's lips curled into a smirk. This was a waste of their time, he thought. Their shields would absorb the impact with ease. But then the first shell landed. The explosion wasn't what they expected. The howitzer's shell penetrated the energy shields that had previously made the Zarak feel invincible. The shields flickered and failed, and the resulting blast sent shrapnel ripping through the alien forces. Zarak tanks were torn apart by the concussive force, their plasma cannons rendered useless as they were blown into smoking ruins. Alien infantry were thrown through the air, their energy shields disintegrating before the relentless power of the howitzer rounds. Carrick's amusement faded quickly, replaced by confusion. The humans had done something unexpected. For the first time in the invasion, the Zarak warlords found themselves facing real damage. How could these primitive humans possess weapons that could bypass their shields? The battlefield, once a display of Zarak dominance, was now a scene of devastation for their side. As more howitzer shells fell, entire sections of the alien ground forces were obliterated. The Zarak's war machines, once unstoppable, were now nothing more than twisted wreckage scattered across the battlefield. On Earth, human soldiers cheered as the tide of battle began to turn. The destruction of the alien forces by their artillery gave them hope. They had watched in horror as their modern weapons failed to stop the Zarak, but now, with the howitzers in play, they saw a path to victory. The military quickly adjusted its strategy, coordinating more artillery strikes to focus on alien weak points. The precision of the howitzers allowed them to target and destroy Zarak command vehicles, communication hubs, and supply lines, leaving the alien forces in disarray. The Zarak, once so confident in their technological superiority, were now scrambling to regroup. Carrick barked orders to his commanders, demanding an immediate response. They needed to reinforce their shields, to adapt quickly, but the damage had already been done. The humans were no longer flailing in desperation. They were organized, striking back with precision and ruthlessness. As the Zarak tried to launch a counterattack, they found themselves hindered at every turn. Human forces had regained their composure and began employing guerrilla tactics to keep the aliens off balance. The howitzers were relocated constantly, ensuring that the Zarak couldn't pinpoint their positions for retaliation. Human troops used the cover of night, urban environments, and dense forests to launch surprise attacks on Zarak units, further weakening the invaders' hold on the battlefield. The alien warlords, used to swift victories and unconditional surrender from their enemies, were now facing the one thing they had never encountered before, an enemy that could fight back. Carrick's frustration grew with every passing hour. His strategy, built on arrogance and the assumption that humans were technologically inferior, was unraveling before his eyes. The humans had proven resilient, adaptable, and most of all, dangerous. As more howitzer shells rained down on the alien forces, the Zarak found themselves on the defensive for the first time in their long history of conquest. Their confidence was shattered, and their forces, once so imposing, were beginning to crumble. The tide had turned. What had started as a one-sided slaughter had become a full-blown battle, and the humans, with their seemingly outdated technology, were winning. The atmosphere inside the Zarak command ship had changed. High Warlord Carrick's usual air of smugness had been replaced with visible frustration. His commanders, who had once shared his confidence, now sat in silence, reviewing the data coming in from the battlefield below. They were no longer laughing at Earth's artillery. Instead, they were trying to comprehend how their advanced shields and war machines had been torn apart by what they had considered primitive weaponry. Carrick stood, his fists clenched, as he addressed his top lieutenants. How is it possible that these humans, with their outdated ballistic weapons, have managed to inflict such damage? I want answers. Now. His voice carried the weight of authority, but also the undertone of uncertainty. The room was silent for a moment before one of his advisors spoke cautiously. "High Warlord, it seems that their artillery, this Howitzer, is able to bypass our plasma shields. Our systems were never designed to defend against such crude forms of attack." The word crude sounded bitter now, no longer spoken with arrogance but with a growing realization that their superiority wasn't as absolute as they had believed. Carrick slammed his fist onto the table, the force of the blow making the others flinch. "Deploy heavier ground units. Increase plasma shield output. I want drones in the sky at all times, finding these artillery positions and eliminating them. Crush them before they think they've gained the upper hand." The orders went out immediately. More advanced armor was sent to the battlefield, accompanied by legions of Zarak infantry with reinforced shields. Their drones, small, swift, and lethal, were deployed in swarms, programmed to seek out the human artillery positions and destroy them before another barrage of deadly shells could be fired. This time, the Zarak were determined to overwhelm the humans with sheer force. Carrick was resolute. He would not allow Earth to defy them. The humans, however, had anticipated this. Earth's military strategists knew they wouldn't be able to rely solely on the howitzers. The alien drones were a real threat, and the Zarak were now aware of the effectiveness of human artillery. But instead of panicking, the humans adapted. Mobile artillery units kept moving, constantly repositioning to avoid detection. Guerrilla tactics were employed to keep the Zarak off balance, with smaller, faster strikes meant to confuse and mislead the alien forces. Human ingenuity, honed through centuries of war on their own planet, was proving to be their greatest weapon. The howitzers continued to fire, but now they did so from hidden positions, coordinated with decoy units to throw off the Zarak drones. Each time a shell landed, more alien forces were torn apart. Tanks, infantry, and command posts, none were safe from the devastating power of the human artillery. In response, Carrick's forces pushed harder, escalating the battle with greater ferocity. Their second assault was a coordinated blitz, with armored units advancing under the cover of their plasma shields and aerial drones attacking from above. Plasma blasts filled the sky, while Zarak infantry advanced in tight formation, their weapons set to destroy anything in their path. But despite their superior technology and renewed aggression, the human forces held their ground. The precision strikes from the howitzers continued to wreak havoc on the alien forces, breaking through their shields and sending shockwaves across the battlefield. Earth's commanders, aware that they couldn't afford a single mistake, began leveraging every tool at their disposal. Satellite intelligence tracked the movements of the alien ground forces, while drones operated by human forces provided real-time feedback on alien weaknesses. The humans were playing a game of chess, anticipating every move the Zarak made, and countering it with precision. Each artillery strike was calculated, targeting key alien strongholds, communication hubs, and supply chains. The howitzer, now the centerpiece of Earth's defense, was firing relentlessly, its shells tearing through alien shields and obliterating their advanced armor. What the Zarak had once dismissed as outdated technology was now their greatest threat. Every explosion on the battlefield was a reminder of their overconfidence. Frustration grew among the Zarak warlords. Carrick's commanders, once unshakable in their belief of Zarak's superiority, were now questioning their strategy. They had underestimated the humans, not just in terms of weaponry, but in their ability to adapt and counter even the most advanced technology the galaxy had to offer. Carrick, refusing to admit defeat, issued one final command. "We will overwhelm them. Send everything we have. Our numbers will crush them, even if our shields falter. If they want a war, we will give them one." His voice was filled with determination, but there was a trace of something else, a growing fear that his forces were no longer in control. As the Zarak launched their final assault, the battlefield erupted into chaos. Thousands of alien troops surged forward, supported by tanks, aerial drones, and massive war machines designed to annihilate anything in their path. It was a display of raw power, meant to drown out the resistance through sheer numbers and force. Plasma blasts lit up the sky, and the ground shook as alien artillery rained down on human positions. But the humans didn't falter. They had been preparing for this. With their howitzers still firing, the human forces launched a counteroffensive of their own. Artillery shells landed with pinpoint accuracy, destroying alien formations before they could reach Earth's defenses. The Zarak's heavy units, though formidable, were no match for the precision and power of the human artillery. Each strike sent shockwaves through the alien ranks, causing chaos and confusion. As the battle intensified, cracks began to show in the Zarak forces. Their plasma shields, once thought invulnerable, were failing. The human artillery, relentless and accurate, continued to punch through their defenses, leaving the alien war machines vulnerable. Tanks exploded, drones were shot down, and the once imposing Zarak infantry found themselves overwhelmed by the sheer resilience of the human defenders. Carrick, watching from the command ship, felt the weight of his decisions pressing down on him. His forces were faltering. The humans had done the impossible, they had fought back, and they were winning. Every moment brought more losses, and every decision seemed to backfire. The Zarak's reliance on their superior technology had blinded them to the cunning and adaptability of the human race. Retreat crossed Carrick's mind, but his pride wouldn't allow it. He couldn't accept defeat, not at the hands of a species he had deemed so inferior. No, he muttered to himself, his voice filled with bitterness. We will fight until the last of them falls. But deep down Carrick knew. The tide had turned, and no matter how many forces he sent, no matter how advanced their weapons were, the humans would not be easily crushed. Their resilience, their cunning, had shattered the illusion of Zarak invincibility. The final assault had failed. What remained of the alien forces retreated, scattered and broken. The final assault began with an ominous roar. Thousands of Zarak troops descended upon Earth's last line of defense, their towering war machines looming over the battlefield like juggernauts. The air was thick with the sound of alien engines and the whine of plasma cannons charging, ready to unleash their devastating energy blasts. Aerial support swarmed above, with drones and strike crafts poised to rain destruction from the skies. The sheer size and power of the invading force dwarfed anything Earth had seen before. It was a show of overwhelming force, designed to crush humanity once and for all. Earth's defenders knew the stakes. There was no retreat, no fallback. If they failed here, everything would be lost. Human soldiers, battered from previous battles but determined, dug in along the defensive lines. Trenches, barricades, and hastily fortified positions stretched across the landscape, filled with grim faces. Each soldier knew that this could very well be their last stand, but they stood resolute, bolstered by the victories they had won so far. The Howitzers, humanity's last great hope, were fully mobilized, ready to unleash their fury one more time. Every artillery crew knew what was coming. They had seen the destruction their shells could inflict, and they were prepared to do it again. As the alien forces closed in, Earth's military leaders gave the order to fire. What followed was a deafening barrage of artillery fire that shook the very ground beneath them. The M777 howitzers let loose, their shells screaming through the air before slamming into the heart of the alien army. Explosions erupted across the battlefield as the shells found their targets, tearing through Zarak tanks, war machines, and infantry alike. Alien troops were thrown into disarray, their formations breaking under the relentless bombardment. The alien war machines, once considered unstoppable, were reduced to smoldering wreckage as the howitzer shells ripped through their armor. The plasma shields that had protected them in the past were now useless against the raw kinetic power of Earth's artillery. The battlefield was soon littered with the remains of Zarak technology, their advanced machinery no match for the brute force of human weaponry. Still, the aliens pushed forward. Carrick, ever prideful, led from the front, directing his forces with a fierce determination. He refused to believe that these humans could continue to resist. Every loss, every destroyed tank or fallen soldier, only fueled his anger. He drove his forces harder, believing that if they could just breach the human lines, victory would be theirs. Plasma fire rained down on the human defenders, and despite the damage they had inflicted, the casualties on the human side were mounting. Soldiers fell under the alien onslaught, their positions overrun or obliterated by the relentless plasma cannons. But the humans didn't break. With each loss, they fought harder, coordinating their defenses with precision. Artillery fire rained down in controlled waves, designed to break up alien advances and keep them from gaining any momentum. Human soldiers, though heavily outnumbered, used every advantage they had, terrain, cover, mobility, to hold their ground. Carrick's confidence began to waver. For every inch his forces gained, they lost more than they could afford. His war machines were being torn apart faster than they could be deployed, and the howitzers, those primitive weapons he had so easily dismissed, were proving to be far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The battlefield, once a scene of Zarak dominance, was turning into a graveyard for his army. Then came the moment that sealed Carrick's fate. A howitzer shell, perfectly aimed and devastating in its impact, struck near his command vehicle. The explosion rocked the ground, and in an instant, his world turned into chaos. The blast tore through his forces, sending wreckage flying and decimating the command unit that had been directing the alien troops. Carrick himself was thrown to the ground, gravely injured. As he struggled to rise, the reality of his situation became clear. Lying amidst the destruction, Carrick's mind raced. How had it come to this? How had the mighty Zarak war machine been brought so low by a species they had considered weak and inferior? His arrogance, his unwavering belief in their superiority, had blinded him to the truth. These humans, with their supposedly outdated weapons and primitive technology, had shown resilience, adaptability, and cunning that he had not expected. As the life drained from his body, Carrick realized that the humans had never been weak. His pride had cost him everything. With Carrick dead, the command structure of the Zarak forces collapsed. What remained of the alien army, already broken and demoralized, quickly fell into disarray. Without leadership, the once coordinated assault turned into a chaotic retreat. Alien soldiers fled the battlefield, their war machines abandoned as they scrambled to escape the destruction raining down upon them. The final assault, Carrick's last desperate bid for victory, had failed. On the human side, the realization of victory began to sink in. The alien forces were retreating, their once imposing presence reduced to scattered remnants fleeing for their lives. Earth's soldiers, battered and bruised but triumphant, cheered as they watched the alien invaders withdraw. The battle was over. The war was won. In the aftermath of the battle, the human military gathered to assess the damage and mourn the fallen. The cost had been high, with thousands of lives lost in the defense of Earth, but the victory was undeniable. Humanity had faced the might of a technologically superior alien race and emerged victorious. The M777 howitzer, once mocked as a relic of a bygone era, was now hailed as the weapon that had saved Earth. Its power and precision had turned the tide of the war and shattered the illusion of Zarak invincibility. As the surviving soldiers celebrated, the true significance of their victory became clear. It wasn't just about defeating the Zarak. It was about proving that humanity, no matter how outmatched, could stand up to any threat. Their resilience, their ability to adapt and fight back, had shown the galaxy that Earth was not to be underestimated. In the end, it wasn't just technology that had won the war. It was the human spirit, the determination to survive, to resist, and to triumph against impossible odds. The Zarak warlords had believed that their advanced weapons and superior numbers would guarantee victory. But they had failed to understand that humans, when pushed to the brink, were capable of far more than anyone could have imagined. Earth had faced annihilation and survived. And the lesson was clear to any who would threaten humanity in the future: underestimate Earth at your peril.